All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. It's about a 15-hour car ride between Dallas, Texas, and Phoenix, Arizona, as the old Southwest is set to be home for the 2023 version of the World Series. For the Arizona Diamondbacks, it's their first trip to the Fall Classic since they won that epic series against the New York Yankees back in 2001. While for the Texas Rangers, they are seeking their first World Series championship rather in franchise history, as this is their first trip to the Fall Classic since they lost in heartbreaking fashion to the St. Louis Cardinals back in 2011. Now, this won't be the first time the Globe Life is hosting the World Series. Of course, you remember during the 2020 COVID year, this was the site rather of the Fall Classic between the Los Angeles Dodgers and Tampa Bay Rays. You got two wild card teams in the World Series this year with the Diamondbacks and the Texas Rangers. And of course, neither one of them is playing like a wild card team right now. Both of these teams were leading their respective divisions at one point. Honestly, Texas looked like they were going to be a shoe-in to win the American League West, and then they had to settle for the wild card spot after they finished tied with the Astros atop the AL West. Of course, the Astros got the first round bye. And then subsequently, the Rangers and Astros, that was one of the best LCS series I've ever seen. Honestly, you can make the case that both league championship series this year were tremendous. The back and forth between the Rangers and Astros, and then the Arizona Diamondbacks, coming back out of nowhere, because I really feel that the Phillies had an opportunity to put the Diamondbacks away in game number three. The Phillies had all of that momentum after beating the Braves, and the Diamondbacks just not would not quit. And even being down 3-2 going back to Philadelphia, they showed some grit right there. And there's a big reason why they have an opportunity to win this title. CJ, what's going on? I know you're not happy that the Braves lost, but I know somewhat makes up for it, for you to see Philadelphia go out in the LCS, and now you can sit back and watch the World Series a little more comfortably, if you will. But for this series right here, I'm looking at the pitching battle, and you look at Jordan Montgomery, Nathan Evaldi, and you got Max Scherzer. And it looks like it's going to be Nathan Evaldi getting the bump tomorrow night for the Rangers. And for Texas, Evaldi, he's been pitching like a Cy Young candidate all year long. And you got, a Rangers team that was very busy prior to the trade deadline, bringing in Max Scherzer from the Mets, picking up Jordan Montgomery, and then, of course, Evaldi. And I'll tell you like this: Jordan Montgomery and Nathan Evaldi are pitching like guys that are looking to cash in free agency over the winter, and I think both of them are. And they've pitched like that throughout this year, especially down the stretch here in the postseason. And Nathan Evaldi has some life on his fastball that we haven't seen, probably since he helped the Red Sox win the World Series back in 2018. And you're looking at Jordan Montgomery. Oh, how the New York Yankees really messed this one up right here, because this young man is pitching lights out baseball right now, and it's going to be tough for the Diamondbacks to get to him early at least. Max Scherzer, the ultimate wild card, if you will, the veteran, the future Hall of Famer, he's been ill, he's been injured, his fair share of time since coming over to the Rangers, but nonetheless, if Scherzer can, be the Max Scherzer that everybody expects him to be, that's just going to add more depth to this Texas rotation. But don't sleep on the Diamondbacks pitching staff, because we saw that, especially in game 6 and 7 at Citizens Bank, when they were able to shut down that potent Phillies lineup. You've got Merrill Kelly, you've got Zach Gallen, and actually it's going to be Zach Gallen who's going to get the ball in game one tomorrow night. So, this guy can bring it in. And you got Merrill Kelly taking the ball for game two. And then you got Brandon Fatt. And Brandon Fatt has shown throughout the year that he's a quality pitcher, but he's really picked it up in this postseason run for Arizona. You think back to the wild card series against Milwaukee, the LDS against the Dodgers, and then of course just now the LCS against Philadelphia. And it's going to be important because you look at this Texas Rangers lineup. First and foremost, Adalis Garcia is a one-man wrecking crew, but of course, it's not just him. You've got Corey Seager with so much postseason experience with the Dodgers, and then of course helping the Dodgers win that World Series back in 2020. You've got the likes of Marcus Simeon in his lineup, and I'll tell you like this Texas lineup is legit. Now, with that said, the Phillies lineup was legit as well, and Arizona's pitching staff found a way to shut them down. So it's one of those for me where it's going to be interesting to see who's going to break and who's going to blink first. For the Diamondbacks, for me, it's still all about Corbin Carroll and Cattell Marte. And it's one of those where you know, Corbin Carroll didn't have from top to bottom, he didn't have the best LCS series against Philadelphia, but he got going in that game seven, and he was a big reason why Arizona was able to get the road win and of course the series win. But I'll tell you like this: it is so important for those. It's going to be important for those Rangers pitchers to keep those two off of base because if you let them get on, it just changes the entire dynamic as far as what Arizona is going to be able to do offensively. You think about the bullpens. Texas's bullpen came into the playoffs much maligned, but you can't make it this far into October without having a quality bullpen. And this is what the Rangers have been doing so far throughout this postseason run. And then on the flip side for the Arizona Diamondbacks, it's been the same thing. The Diamondbacks have been tearing it up, shutting down just about everybody who they faced, and they're fearless. That's the biggest thing. So I think once you mix that into the equation, I think you're in for a stellar series. Uh, Big contrast in managers: Torey Lovello for Arizona, and of course Bruce Bochy. Bruce Bochy, he's made history, the first guy in MLB history to lead three different clubs to the Fall Classic, and now he has an opportunity to win a championship. With two different teams, joining the likes of greats such as Tony La Russa, who have been able to do it. But I tell you, Bruce Bochy, in his first year as the skipper of the Texas Rangers, he's a man's man. Wherever he goes, he's a player's manager. Guys are ready to run through a wall for him. And he treats his guys well, whether it was San Diego or San Francisco, and now, of course, Texas. And he knows how to get the most out of his team. And I think, he has his finger on the pulse of this team. It's a scenario where everything has come together for him. You have a good mixture for Texas as far as veterans and youngsters in this lineup. And again, Bochy, knows how to get the best out of those guys. Torey Lovolo, obviously, a team, regardless of the sport, they take on, the mindset and the framework of their manager or head coach. And of course, in this case, manager in the big leagues. And this team, they have a lot of grit, the Arizona Diamondbacks do, and they don't give up easily. And of course, again, I can't harp on this enough. Down 3-2 going back to Citizens Bank, they were unfazed. I mean, you figure the way that the Phillies came out there and won Game 5 in the desert, they had all of the momentum going for themselves, heading back to that raucous Citizens Bank Park, and the Cardinals were not. Pardon me, the Diamondbacks rather. I'm thinking Arizona Cardinals with football. Excuse me, but nonetheless, they were unfazed by that. So I'm looking at this Diamondbacks team. They're not going to roll over. It's going to be some back and forth throughout this series. And I think the biggest thing is who's going to make which lineup rather is going to be able to make the opposing pitching staff crack first. That's going to be the big thing because I feel like whoever does that, it's going to open up the floodgates, if you will, for some damage throughout this series. You look at it, neither one of these teams from top to bottom have a ton of championship experience there, but I am going to give that edge to the Rangers. Definitely from the managerial standpoint, I'm going to give the edge to the Rangers. And one thing's for sure, you're going to see a lot of fans from both of these clubs, traveling around. Now, granted, in the LCS, you had the Phillies. Their fans really took over. out there in the desert, and these Rangers fans are believing right now. And of course, we know that the fans from the Dallas area will travel, to the Southwest. I mean, you think about it from an NFL standpoint, all of those years where the Cowboys and Cardinals were in the NFC East together, and of course, even still now, with Cardinals in the NFC West, you get the Dallas fans. Of course, Dallas Cowboys fans are everywhere. Don't get me wrong, but they still travel out there to the desert and see their team. And I think the Texas Rangers fans are going to do that as well. Aroldis Chapman in that bullpen. This guy, he still has electric stuff at this point of his career, and I think he has an opportunity to be an impact guy. He's one of those guys that was written off after the way that his Yankee tenure ended. Went to Kansas City, got picked up here by Texas, and I think he's got something to prove in this series as well. I think there's a lot of guys who have a lot to prove on both sides, and for the Texas Rangers after that epic series against against the Houston Astros, there's no going back, from that right now. So with that said, I'm going to take the Texas Rangers to get past the Arizona Diamondbacks in 6 games, as I think they're going to win their first World Series championship in franchise history. CJ, you're still, I'm not going to say bitter, but I am going to say, you're not thrilled about the way that LDS went down. And, I told you, I remember you saying that it was going to be a sweep for by the Braves. The Phillies were too good, uh, too too much of a common opponent. And I felt like National League side wise, if there was one team out there that could have beaten the Atlanta Braves, it definitely was the Fighting Phils, and they did. So let's see how your Braves come back next year. Chelsea Grin, what's going on? How you doing? Thanks for the chiming in. You're saying these are two teams that definitely have serious grit. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that one. They got a lot of resolve. It's nice to see a World Series where both teams are underdogs in a way, especially in the conference finals. Well, I'll say like this, and both of you folks, are more than welcome to chime in on this one. I think the 2020 COVID year, opened some eyes around front offices in Major League Baseball because, of course, that year it was just 60 games during the regular season, and because of that, we had the expanded postseason, 8 teams from each league, and I think that opened some intrigue, if you will, from ownership around Major League Baseball. Then I also think that MLB is trying to get with the times, if you will, as far as the intrigue from fans, and you see it in the NFL. The NFL obviously is right now popularity wise is light years ahead of MLB. But even without the NFL expanding their postseason a couple of years ago, the playoff rounds are so exciting. Now the NFL obviously has gone on and expanded that. Then, of course, recently with the NBA, with the play-in tournament, we're seeing the expansion of the college football playoff. We've seen, postseason, in NASCAR, and it's one of those where Major League Baseball wants to get in on that trend. They want to get in on that excitement, and the expanded postseason has given more teams life. I mean, you think about it. The Arizona Diamondbacks won 84 games during the regular season, and typically, when a team wins 84 games, it's like come the last week of the season, they have nothing to play for. It's usually the young guys, trying to make a name for themselves fresh out of the minor leagues. You look at the Texas Rangers. Texas was good enough to win the American League West. It's just the fact that you're in a division with the Houston Astros, and again, they still finished tied with the same record. Now for Texas, I'm going to tell you like this: they came into the postseason and you know they faced the Rays in the first round, and of course the Rays are so phenomenal in the regular season. But I talked about it after the Rangers beat the Rays that not having any fans there at Tropicana Field is embarrassing. You know what I'm saying, and it's unfortunate. And the Rays are going to set up there and get a new stadium, and it's like, okay, fine, you're going to get a new venue, but still nobody's going to support your product, and it's unfortunate because the Rays play some darn good baseball during the regular season. Then they face the Orioles, a team. that yes, they did win 100 games in the regular season, but it's still new to them, if you will. And the Orioles didn't have the great pitching during the regular season, and it showed up as they lost in 4 games. And then with the Astros, it's one of those type series where what, you just go out there and flip a coin. On the flip side, for the Arizona Diamondbacks, you know, Milwaukee, the Brewers are another one of those teams. They're more of a regular season team, in my opinion, the way that they're structured. And Arizona was able to take advantage of that. And I'm not trying to downplay what the Diamondbacks did. Very familiar with the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks are. And then they caught a Dodgers team that had a lot of question marks in their pitching staff. It showed during that series. And then, of course, this Diamondbacks pitching staff was able to shut down the key Dodgers hitters, such as Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. And then, moving ahead to the NLCS, the Diamondbacks faced a Phillies team that was as hot could be. They had swept the Miami Marlins in the wild card round. Then, going out there and beating the Braves for the second consecutive year in 4 games. And you could make the case that the Braves were close to getting swept if it wasn't for that great catch by Michael Harris in game number 2. And the Phillies had all of the momentum. They showed that at the beginning of the series, especially that 10-0 win in game number 2. But Arizona did not give up. And that is a big reason why they're here. But with that said, the expanded postseason is definitely here to stay. At some point, the owners of Major League Baseball, around Major League Baseball, they're probably going to expand it a little bit more. That's their prerogative. They're going to do it for money. And as long as money's involved, that's what those guys are going to do. You're saying that they should reseed, CJ. I think that could be a possibility coming down the pike, because you look at it, especially in the American League, the Toronto Blue Jays faced the Minnesota Twins in the wild card round. The Blue Jays were the 6 seed, and the Twins were the 3 seed. And without looking it up, I do think that the Jays had a better record um, than the Twins heading into that series. And it's one of those where, the Central teams, the Central Division winners, they just get the benefit of the doubt due to the fact that they won their division. But I mean, you look at it. The Rays were in the wild card. They had 99 wins. The Jays, had close to 90 wins. The Rangers had 90 wins. You think about the Phillies. The Phillies probably would have won most of the other divisions around baseball if they didn't have to stay in the National League East with the Braves. So I guarantee you that is a possibility. It's not going to be soon, but it is a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe in the next 3 to 5 years that is something that definitely could happen. But CJ, I know that you're still upset about your beloved Braves, but at the end of the day, I want to see who you think is going to win this series. You know what I'm saying? And for me, I think this is going to be a good cap to what has been a a darn good postseason. I think there were some lulls, if you will, at times at points during the regular season, and it's like that in most leagues because, especially with the NBA and especially with Major League Baseball, a lot of fans think that the regular season is a bit too long. Me personally, I don't. That's just my opinion. But there's something about October baseball that makes the hairs on the back of people's necks stand up. And I think we've seen that throughout this postseason run right here, for both teams and honestly all around. It's one of those where there's been plenty of excitement. You have a scenario where I think, with the exception of Tampa, you've had a lot of a lot of exciting fans. I think that Texas Houston series brought out the best of the fan base in the Lone Star State. You think about the Phillies fans, you think about the Braves fans, because the Braves fans, they were a little lackluster last year, but they came out at those 2 games down there in Georgia and supported their team in spite of the fact that the Braves didn't move on. You think about the crowd at Target Field in Minneapolis. Those folks were with it. You think about Camden Yards, even though that the Orioles didn't win, those fans were electric. I mean, Baltimore has some great sports fans, and the Orioles. People forget how much tradition that franchise has had over the years. And those fans out there want to see a winner. Even though that the Dodgers didn't win, the fans still come out there to Chavez Ravine and support their club. So I think, it's one of those where the fans are out there supporting, the fans love this product. And I think, Major League Baseball is etching its way back up as they've tried to go out there, ignite the love of the game with a new younger fan base. They've been doing that. Some of the stuff I agree with, some of it I don't. I totally understand where they're coming from on it, but I think baseball is definitely on its way back up. Chelsea Grin, you saying you got the Rangers in 7. Hopefully, if it does, it goes to the ninth inning, and if it goes to extra innings, I hope it's down to the last out. Well, of course, you think about the Diamondbacks' one trip to the World Series back in 2001. That was an epic against the New York Yankees. There were some people who really didn't give the Diamondbacks that much of a chance in that series because they were facing the three-time defending champs. But, you think about it, that was a stellar series. And I mean, that is what happened. Obviously, it's a different era, and I think teams really should go back to that mindset. But that's what happens when you let pitchers pitch, because you think about what Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling both meant to the Diamondbacks winning that year. That right there was tremendous for me. That's definitely in my top 5 of the most favorite World Series that I've seen. I still think the '91 series between Minnesota and Atlanta was a thriller. CJ, I don't know if you were around for that one, but I tell you, it was epic. And of course, Jack Morris gave one of the best pitching performances of all time in that game 7, going 10 innings. The '86 series between the Mets and the Boston Red Sox, that was another thriller. You think about the '85 series between the Cardinals and Royals, the '87 series between the Cardinals and Twins, and then of course the Diamondbacks and Yankees in 2001, and then several others I'm gonna put up in that mix. That 2011 series between Texas and St. Louis, when Texas looked like they had it won until the Cardinals rallied a couple of times, and I said it then, and I'm going to say it right now. David Freese will never have to buy another drink within the St. Louis city limits after what he did in that fall classic. You think about the 1993 series between Philadelphia and Toronto, where Joe Carter, hit that epic home run to help the Jays win back-to-back championships. But nonetheless, I think this is going to be a solid series. I think any fan of baseball is going to enjoy it. I'm going to watch it. I'm definitely going to watch all 9 innings. Chelsea Grin, it would be that perfect Hollywood ending, if you would, if you would, for the series to end that way. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. Uh, CJ, you're saying, do you think the Braves might head out and extend Freed this offseason? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think what's going to happen trade wise and free agency wise, I think it's going to be a domino effect. I think teams are going to sit back and see who makes a move and then react to that point. But I mean, the Braves, they're pretty much set. The Rangers, on the other hand, these guys, for all of the teams that spent a lot of money last offseason and didn't work out, uh, the Mets, the Padres, the Yankees, the Rangers went out there and they spent a lot of money. And it's one of those where it's worked out. You think about it, a couple of years ago when this new ownership group came in, they gave a boatload of money to Corey Seager, a ton of money to Marcus Simeon, and then taking on the contract to Max Scherzer, giving Jacob DeGrom all of that money. It's and going out there and getting Bruce Bochy. The Rangers have shown, and the Rangers play in one of the bigger media markets in the country, that what, they're all in. And that's what you got to do. To quote, a former football coach, you play to win the game, and that's what they've done. The former Yankees owner George Steinbrenner, he never met a dollar that he didn't like to spend in regards to putting a contender out on the field, and that's what the Rangers have done, and it's been successful for them. On the flip side, for the Arizona Diamondbacks, they've kept it close to the chest as far as their spending. Phoenix, obviously not as big of a media market as Dallas, but nonetheless, the Diamondbacks have done what they've needed to do to get to this point. And I think it's going to be a contrast of styles beginning tomorrow night. But nonetheless, I think we are in store for a tremendous fall classic to wrap up what has been a darn good postseason around Major League Baseball. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. CJ, as always, thank you for your support. Thanks for chiming in. And I hope you get an opportunity to really sit down and get a good look at this series. Chelsea Grin, as always, thank you for the support as well. You said Rangers in 7. I'm going Rangers in 6, but I think both that's the way both of us are leaning. But at the same time, the Diamondbacks are going to show that they're not going to be an easy out. And I think you can ask any of their opponents so far here in this postseason, and they will definitely agree. But with that said, folks, this is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.